Chill here with Sirius Talisman. This is Mercury, our Mars day. Now, this energy reading, part 5. I ended with Medusa being the Amarita that was worshipped in Africa, or even is. I don't know too much about. There's so many countries in Africa. Like there's so many countries in Europe, and the Amarita was worshipped. And they mentioned Libya as the place where they have a huge statue, I think, of Beta Persei, of Medusa Gorgon, and she is to do with the water. When raped, everything gets corrupt, including the place becomes a desert. And even today, where the places are still desert in Sahara, they're doing reforestation, but there are organized crime, sacrifice of children, or children, children being the criminals and trafficked and so on. And I end up with Medusa Gorgon being the Amarita, that one cannot see if they rape. Now, part 5 of this energy. Somebody was thinking that to speak in cuss words, to be rapist, to always see something as a whore, and to have a discernment that, how should I say that? In a society where people sacrifice children and do rituals underground, look at this Ascendant 22 Sagittarius as I speak, Mercury. And that the person would not go and study the etiquette of that society because they would not sit in the table before they are safe, that those things are no longer. It's not from a strike, it's from how can there even be a conversation? How can there even be, like, what's the point of learning how to differentiate with which fork to eat when it's a baby corpse that's being served, okay? And that's something that I received a while ago. And so somebody was insisting on projecting classlessness into someone that were seeing them for who they are. And they were thinking that they are speaking the truth, telling the truth as it is. Why do they have to pose as? They're not. And then they felt dumbfounded by being rejected. And this is something that is so old. It can be like somebody that wanted to be somebody's first love and didn't manage to, feeling betrayed because they thought that why did that whore said no to me? Dude, do you know what love is? This is someone that came from either lineage or society, a way of thought that was very colonialistic and even Nazi, because they thought that their love is, this was a person that would see somebody who is beggar on the street and give them, money that is not really honoring of something, like in that they cannot buy anything with, and then say, oh, but look, I'm giving you this, why don't you appreciate, why don't you this, why don't you that, where the homeless in the street can see that that person is in such spiritual poverty. And it is all to these decades. And again, I feel that some people I feel called out where they might not even, I might not even be talking about them, but they might feel called out, or because they feel that it relates to them as well. I don't know. But this is, okay, it's important to understand that the rituals of satanic abuse and ritual abuse, they were creating a lot of fragmentation and coping mechanisms. And the issue is not to shame anyone, okay? But it's also not to enable these coping mechanisms. I said a while ago, with this Scorpio season, the old coping mechanisms have to go. And that's every Scorpio season is like that. Because whenever something goes through Scorpio, is like that. And now we had Mars, the Sun, we had Mercury, and now Venus and the Sun, and Black Moon Lilith going through Scorpio. It's very scorpionic. The old coping mechanisms have to go. Okay, being in spiritual poverty, just like being in physical poverty is not to be shamed, being in spiritual poverty is not to be shamed, but it's also to acknowledge and see, oh well, that was really racist or Nazi or colonialist, and those are the type of horrors and traumas that this worldview stems from, and to project that onto another is not a coping mechanism. It was done from coping mechanism, but this coping mechanism has to go. I know it exposed a lot of satanists under guises of whether Christian or or even atheist, or I don't know, but but it is also true that to do that to people, to create on purpose situation where people will be in need, and to try to ruin their soil, to ruin their houses, to kill the dogs that they go, whether to hunting with or to guard the cattle or to guard the land or whatnot, and to do that, you know, is stemming from traumas that they learned somewhere, but those coping mechanisms have to go. It's an ego fracture, it's an ego death, but this ego death is not to shame or to ridicule or to diminish. Is Yes, it fractures the ego, but it is about rebirth, and this is what Scorpio is about. Scorpio 19, Sun is 19 degrees Scorpio. We are before a rebirth. And here is the thing, that person held it against, because they saw the person that was seeking a love that is actually loving and not settling for less as that person that sees so much of themselves. They wouldn't come down to earth. They wouldn't be like one of the common people. They're commoner, they're horror, they're this. What do they think themselves of? That's not love. That's not someone that person can relate to, because it's not love. Mechanisms that, and this particular story has been there. It can be somebody was 20 and now they're 40. And that person still observing them and still trying to make of them something that they're not, and wonder why nothing, all of their feelings were not met. Because to begin with, they weren't giving the person a place that honors life. To begin with, they were Now, another thing can be that there was genuine incompatibility, okay? Uh, Genetics, the compatibility of the sexual tendencies, okay, the type of nature, the type of sexuality is also playing into the mix when it comes to attraction and sexually satisfying life, okay? I remember when I looked at Moon Nakshatra compatibility, it was a teaching of Lada Duncheva, it's a Vedic teaching, and there was each moon is associated to animal, and I naively looked at that, and then I was like naively looking at that at certain chart that I was it was not about romance, let's just put it that way. The context I was looking at was not about romance, and then I look at that and I see for it was the type of genitals. If they come out, I'm like, oh my god, I wasn't seeking that information. Because moon is creativity and fertility, and I wanted to see if there is compatibility regarding with the ideas of one another, okay? Moon is housing ideas and so on. So about a creative project or about are those people compatible to work together with the approval of one another's ideas? Then I look at this moon nakshatra, I was like, this is deep type of genitals, and this is, I'm like, oh wait, I didn't. Um, so sometimes, even when person has, regardless of how many chromosomes they have, okay, this, um, those teachings might still be relevant. So sometimes some energy might not just be on a erotic compatibility that is complete. No, sometimes it's both not erotic compatibility and mind worldview that needs to change. Sometimes, even as the worldview changes, they discover that there was just okay, there was a lack of compatibility there. Okay, it doesn't make anybody good or bad. Okay, it's just like okay, it's just like nature. I don't know, but this is where somebody was building onto that mountains of expectations and mountains of disappointment because they ascribed it to their value where it says nothing of their value. However, if because of that a person mistreats someone, tries to harvest energy of someone, tries to traffic someone, then of course that's not love, you know. Um, and they try to push them being a human trafficker on somebody else being a whore or a prostitute. It's like they're not a prostitute, they're not a whore. You try to forcibly rape and traffic and torture someone, is your being ritual abuser and doing crimes against humanity. And it doesn't matter how many times you will sit in an enclosed space and says mantra, they are whore, they are whore, they are whore, they are whore. They will not be whore. But you will be exposed as war criminal. As someone that tried to cause people accidents, to cause people ailments on purpose. To try to put them in poverty and then say, oh, I'm the benevolent rich person that gives you. Everybody that played that trick got, so meticulously, how should I say that? Light even saw this, and she talked about with things that could happen to these people, but I'm saying something even deeper. It's not whether they try to plan an accident for someone and they will have an accident. Not even that. It's that to begin with, their coping mechanism was creating the fracturing of their own ego and sense of self in the face of that coping mechanism. The one that wants someone to humble themselves, the one that presents themselves as the benevolent while they're doing rituals to harvest on the life energy of someone, either the guise of a sexual partner or downright rape, which they try to excuse. There's no excuse for that. And because this is something that goes about global secret societies, they could be. It's no wonder that there is a woman of color from coming from one continent and a man that was coming from escaping this cloning community, and a woman broadcasting from Israel Palestine to see that, because it's something that's a trajectory. And the people don't want that, men and women. And the people that are still in that trajectory, yeah, now here's the thing. If somebody says, if the landlord hires people to work on the land as slaves and live in the land and presents it as a deal and doesn't write and doesn't allow them to inherit the land that they work on, not even all the land that they work on, the land that they live in, then there will be a plague. That's normal, that's usual. And only the people that worked their hands into the soil survived that plague, even if they had slaves, because their immune system was not, was not deteriorated. But those that saw it as a, and you know what, some of them were women, but you know what, even if not women, this, those that saw it as a status symbol, that they're the landlords and this feudalistic system that they have slaves, they died in the plague, not because of moral prophecy. No, their immune system deteriorated because they contaminated the soil, and the people that had dug their hands into the soil, their immune system was better. That's what happened in the Black Death. It's not just the Spanish flu. The Spanish flu was a warfare that was created to kill the young people. When the man that said to Americans, "Are we going to sacrifice our country on a cross of gold?" got mocked and ridiculed, America died. On that day, on that cross. And it's not a golden cross, it's an oil well consolidation and ritual abuse of children cross. But it was not yet visible, and we see it now with the onset of Saturn Neptune, and definitely when Pluto and Neptune meet in a square. It's not poetic language, it's practical truth. And here that energy thought that being whore is the practical truth, that raping, and I'm sorry, somebody giving someone sex like it's a favor that somebody owes someone, that is the truth. That there is no love, and that is the truth. No, no. Of course, when you traffic people and you call that diplomacy or business or real estate, and those people, they tend to get younger and younger and younger and younger and younger. And you do dark occult to harvest on their energy, and you feel like the benevolent rich man when you offer them a dime and they refuse that dime, and you have a narcissistic rage over them refusing their dime for their dignity because they know that they are homeless because of your war crimes. And then you fall in love, but there is no conception to that thread of love to begin with. And I really liked what Light said, that the thread is going to be pulled. Somebody thought that somebody will have some information that's revealed, but the thread is going to be pulled from underneath the entire organization, network, or whatnot. Of course, because this is, it's kind, it's kind of like the artificial spider webs, and then the actual spider comes and says, "What's that? What is this electric wire they build around?" That's a ghetto. Even I, the spider, cannot build anything here. But it's not a place that can get old. It's a place that was meant to be, that the gates of that meant to be broken. And thus the builder of those, and here's the thing, it's not even about the people that try to warn of the building of those and try to get to a better future. Because there are those people. Some of them traffickers, some of them handlers, some of them this, some of them mafiosi, some of them that. They try to say, get away from here, it's getting terrible here, get away, you don't know what they do here. Okay? And then, of course, it's them that do that. But this one is particular energy that thought that people are deserving to be in those type of prisons. And all he has to do to be the big master is to improve a slight bit the conditions of the prison. He thought that people, that psychology teaches that people don't like to have choice. They're overwhelmed with choice. No, they're not. Oh, the world was overwhelming people when people had choice. They didn't know what to do and they were like, no, they're not. The world was overwhelmed with rape presented as sexual liberation. And it doesn't mean that people are monogam or not monogam. But neither monogamy nor polyamory were a possibility within that society. Teal Swan talks about polyamory a lot, and she says, yes, but it's not like people can be. If people try to be polyamorous today, the number of ego deaths that they will have is going to be so tremendous that they will collapse. They will not even feel the joy of that. Because indeed, when people meet their non-erotic needs, then the eroticism, where's this Norwegian guy that says that in Norwegian you call, I don't know if this is true, you will have to ask girls there, but it says you come to a woman and say, oh, hello, you want to come to my place and do the good thing. And it's kind of like, hey, when everybody's needs are met, then sexuality is just this open thing where it's like, hey, do you want to have some, nice time together? And that could be actually met with positivity because, hey, if there is attraction, then why not? Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work, okay? But okay. And again, I don't know if that's a real scenario or something meant to try to normalize something that's not normalized in Norway. Like I'm not I don't know the inside knowledge around that. Um, but this is also the notion that where people meet their non-erotic needs, then sexuality becomes one of those things that we enjoy doing together. in a loving, innocent, lifeful way. There is not that disconnection of the heart space and the genitals to begin with. That disconnection was only created by rape of boys and girls and hermaphrodites with the extra chromosomes. And when people, and the language matters a lot. When in the language, making love sound is considered, even in community, people think that there is kinky community. Most of it is handlers. I know I'm going to get some, but except for like the Evie lupines, most of that is handlers programming and dumbfuckery. And the language matters a lot, where vanilla is considered something that is mocking at somebody for not being kinky, so to speak. We see the residues of that, where love is considered boring. Oh, somebody is interesting that they cannot be like in relationship, and not always. No, no. Bless you. Here, my mom even seized on that. In fact, originality is a reconnection, is a connection with oneself, and a discovery that one does, whether with another or not. And this is where creation also arises, whether it's paintings or children. My mother painted nearly the entire house before she gave birth to a child. And this pressure for women to have children only exposes more of what is done to children in the world. Because women do ask themselves, wait, is my choice around children to be child free or not? Is it coming from my choice? Is it because financial whatnot? And people want to say, okay, I want to understand what even my stand is on that. So I need to tend to my inner child. I need to tend to being financially free, and so on and so forth. So going back to, okay, so that energy being transformed and receiving is being transformed. And that person partook in rape, even though it was maybe even in the astral. But they partook in rape and taking their rage on the person that said no to them sexually. It's not up to a woman to behave a certain way so not to be raped. It never was and never will be. and all the industries that are built on that. And there was, I remember what one of the red flags I saw with one psychologist was when he said, "Oh, yes, but we have to see how do you make sure that it wouldn't happen to you." Where his intention was to try to go into the trauma, to re-victimize and to traffic. There was also a famous case in Israel where a lady went to a psychologist. She was hurt in childhood, and he re-victimized her. Yuval something was the name of the psychologist. But this is a part of this classified project MK Ultra and MK Often. It's a human trafficking ring. Which is crimes against humanity, war crimes, Nazi. It's still the residues of the Nazis. What can I tell you? Now, it's not only the Nazis did not invent that, of course, but the ideology is not different from the Nazi ideology. And any culture, any country. Now now it's trendy to hate Israelis. In the past, people couldn't talk about Israelis. But do you think Palestine is different? It will have to show us that it doesn't traffic people, that it doesn't traffic children, because when I see pictures from Gaza and I see these ladies that are covered, and I know from Bedouin men here, when I would go with my mother to the market, and those ladies would go, the Mama Talibans would go, and the vendor would say, that these are the sex workers, that these are the trafficked girls. They covered their face so that it wouldn't be recognized. And he came from culture where a woman could not walk without her man. This is Taliban. In Taliban, in Afghanistan, a woman cannot go about without a man escorting her. The man is the escort. He has to be the escort, and he has to have at least a couple of women. Because otherwise, what kind of a man is he if he cannot provide for 4 women? Go provide for one in this economy. But if you don't mistreat women, then the water flows. What happens when the water flows? Energy flows is abundance. That's what happens. It's a palace of gold. But you see in Vedic tradition, you see Lakshmi. You see her sitting with the elephants and a castle full of gold. It's not a joke. For a woman, Jupiter is the husband because he brings the teaching. For a man, where do the teaching come from? And I thank Karpil for that. His wife, he thanks his wife because she's his Lakshmi. And for a man, it comes from kissing the feet of the guru, massaging the feet of the guru. Who's the guru? The wife. You give your wife a good feet massage, the water comes. And then everybody has energy and money comes and because it's life energy. We create with life energy. Somebody in astrology conference asked why astrology is so sexy. And here's the thing about astrology. Hardly anybody grows up being, maybe now we will have second generation astrologer. There's some people, fourth generation astrologers, but usually nobody grows to family that says, oh, my child, they would probably be either doctor or engineer or lawyer or astrologer. It's a rebellious life energy Kundalini rise, and some people upon their Kundalini rise they become astrologers. because it may have happened to me and I didn't notice. I don't know. And so people like Kundalini rising. How exciting or dull are your life that you have? But this is. But here's the thing. Of course, it's sexy when a person is connected to their life energy. And of course, it exposes, when a woman orgasms in a building, it exposes all the ladies that didn't have an orgasm for a while. They're silent. I lived in a house, but in the beginning, and then my neighbors began to feel more comfortable, and then they had a baby. The baby was just like the mother, and the mother telling me, I thought to have a baby just the character just like me will be great. It is crazy. I have to deal with myself. Of course, this is what it means to orgasm. And it's not that she didn't orgasm, it's that she never expressed her own voice. And she was smoking, she was coming to ask me, well, my child has issues with the throat. So I tried to avoid her because I was just a newcomer and I was to be her neighbor. I didn't want to tell her, just like, I don't maybe pepper oil, maybe rosemary, something, maybe. How do you get to stop smoking? What truth do you need to express? What divine female rage is standing in your throat that you need to get out to drop the smokes and create life, which you know. I was supposed to be her neighbor, for heaven's sake. And then I kept silent, and and this is how the troubles begin. And people see that even the way that people orgasm has not just the fantasy, but also the way itself, or the voice itself. Uranus Taurus, it's the voice. There is something about the birth story that's connected to that. Something that needs to be contained, accepted, and held space to around that. Because it's kind of like practicing for birth. In fact, when I was in Netherlands, it was the first time in my life where I saw a woman giving birth, and how she was, kneeling to give birth in a natural home birth. And the sad story behind that is a lot of births are natural in Netherlands, but it's because the hospitals don't register all the births. And they try to take the children. So we have this juxtaposition of natural home birth, of women giving birth to babies, and teachings of birthing that come from Netherlands, of natural orgasmic birth, and these stories that we see around. It's not about the cloning, it's about the ritual abuse of the people that were born. And yes, it's the cloning in the sense of how they get the womb that they need for the cloning. Yes,